guys, so really excited to get this one started for you. When I say ultra beginner, that means this is going to start with explaining how to use Unreal, then explaining how I created the scene, and it's going to go through the full export and then even bringing it into DaVinci and kicking out the video. So if you are brand new to Unreal, you can open up this video and watch it beginning to end, and at the very end you will have your own video created in Unreal start to finish. You don't need any other tutorials. So this is what the Epic Marketplace looks like. And the first thing you're going to do is click down here into Unreal Engine, and you'll have these tabs up the top. If you go all the way over to Library, you'll have everything that you've downloaded, and then on top of it you'll even have your projects. I already have this 5.3 tutorial for the ocean created, which is what the original scene is, but we're going to create a brand new scene together. So to do that, let's go up here, make sure you have 5.3 and click Launch. Okay, now after that initial loading screen, this is what you're going to see. There's a bunch of different basically presets that you can use. What we're going to be starting with is going to go to games, and then don't go blank, go to third person. The reason we want to do third person is it's automatically going to load in mannequins for us, and it's automatically going to load in a third person character, which means if you ever want to play around the scene for fun, I personally like to just because it's cool, this is always a good thing to have. So third person is where we're going to start, and then if you go down here, you can choose your project location, and then over here you can change the name. For me, I will name this Seaside V2, and I will choose a project location. Perfect. Well, now that that's done, you can go over to starter content, make sure that this is clicked. It's always good to have the starter content packs because there's a lot of basic materials and textures that you can take advantage of. And then if you do want ray tracing, if you have like an RTX card, you can click this now. We won't be using it in this tutorial, so there is no need, but if you do want to play around with it for this tutorial, I do recommend switching that on. And then click create. Okay, so now that you open up your project, this is what you're going to see. So just to go get a lay of the land, the only thing I want you to use right now is the mouse, and we're gonna go across. So you have a basic file menu, save, export, import, new level, open level, really what you would expect in a file. Edit tab, which will have plugins and project settings. These are two things that you will probably play around with a good amount throughout your career in Unreal Engine. So these are in the edit tab. And then you have a window tab. This has a lot of good things like world settings, which we can get into later, and then viewports, different stuff like that. But the main one here is Quixel Bridge, which is how you're gonna get a lot of the really good assets that we're gonna be using throughout this tutorial. And then the other one is also load layout. So you can mess up your layout. It's very easy. For example, this is the basic layout right here. If you accidentally click out the details panel and the outliner, and then you're not sure how to get them back, the easiest way to just get everything back to normal is always click Windows, go to Load Layout, and click Default Editor Layout. Once you click that, everything will come back for you. So these are all really good things to remember. So we'll start at the top left. Right here, this is going to help you click a lot of the viewport options. So game view, immersive mode, you can change the field of view back and forth like this. We'll keep this at 90 though. A bunch of different things that let you change the actual viewport detail, which is what you're seeing right now. The next one is perspective. So this is going to let you change the way you actually see the world. When you're modeling, a very common thing to do is to go top, bottom, left, and right. This is going to let you see objects perfectly top, bottom, but perspective is going to show you more of a camera view. Another thing that actually helps a lot is this, so you can see lit, wireframe, detail, lighting, lighting only, stuff like that. I usually switch between lit and unlit, mainly because if a project is getting very intense, it's nice to switch to unlit to be able to move smoothly throughout the project without any issues, which you actually might see me do today. Next, this was just going to show you different things that are going to be in your scene that you can hide and show. For example, if I click static meshes, everything is going to disappear. If I click static meshes again, you're going to see it because everything you saw that disappeared was a static mesh. And then finally, you have scalability. Right now it's set to low. We can actually switch easily to cinematic, which is going to look like this. Think of it more like graphic settings, like how nice you want it to look. Over here, we have a bunch of different selections. These are what is going to help you scale, rotate, transform or move around, or just select an object. This is going to allow you to add world settings and movement. So to explain this corner of the screen better, let me click on an object. So if you use WASD on your keyboard, you can move forward, backward, and strafe left and right. And then if you hold right click on your mouse, you can look around. So now using those controls, I'm going to move over to this box. I'm going to left click the box and you're going to see this symbol right here. What this means is if I click right here, I can move it this way. If I click right here, I can move it this way. Now, the more you mess around with this, you might want to switch world settings on and off. So say I twist you and bring you up and turn you. World settings will basically see how now it's oriented to the object, but if I unclick it, it's oriented to the world. So that is what this button is going to help you do. Now, to show you how I actually turned and twisted things, it's the same as these buttons up here. It'll be W, E, and R. So if you click on an object and you click W, you will see what you're seeing right now, which is going to help you move an object the way you want it to move. If you click E, it will be rotate. So now I can rotate the object. And if you click R, it'll be size. Now, for size, this is something you're going to need to know. If I want to elongate just the Z axis, I would be doing hold on just the Z axis. You can also click on these little lines to do 1 or 2 axes. So right now, if I click on this, it'll be just the X and Y, or I think that's Z and X. And then if you want to scale everything, you go for this middle cube and make it gigantic. And that will also apply for all the different modes. So if I click E again for rotate, well, this one doesn't necessarily apply, but if I click A for moving, if I click this middle piece right here, I can now move it up, down, left, right, in any direction. Or I can only hold this and now just strafe it. So these are all really good tools to use to help you play around with the objects in your scene and place them the way you want them to be placed. Now, while you're doing that, up here, these are all your snapping guides. So right now, this is being snapped by every 10 on a grid basis. So let me go over to this box right here. If I want to move this, it is going to move. See how it's shooting almost like it's snapping to a grid? That is because it is snapping to a grid. It's moving 10 paces every single time. If you want that off, all you have to do is click it, and then now it'll move smoothly, so you can get more finer movements. This is something you're gonna have to turn on and off throughout. And the same thing applies for rotating. So if I click E and I go to rotate, you're gonna see these numbers go in increments of 10. So it's 10, 20, 30, 40, stuff like that. But if I unclick it and I keep going, you'll see how it's not going by increments of 10, it's just going up and down smoothly. So both of these are good in the scenarios you would need them. Scaling works the same way, it's just going to scale by 0.25. If you turn it off, you can do more accurate scaling. Now the last thing you're going to see here is this little camera symbol, and that's a camera speed. So if I increase it, the camera will move very fast, and then if I decrease it, the camera will move very slow. So I'm holding down the button, you don't even actually tell I'm moving forward. Now, a quick way of doing this, changing this quickly, which has been added in 5.3, is if you hold down right click and scroll, you'll see that number changing. Now it's scrolling up, so it's changing. Definitely suggest this. It's very nice and handy for just quick movements on how fast you want your camera to move. So yeah, that is your basic viewport and all the settings within the viewport and how to move around. The next thing you're going to see is a details panel, which is just showing you what is in your scene. So in this case, let me back up so I can show the entire scene. If I click on these objects, it's going to show what these objects are in your scene. And this is going to carry out throughout your entire scene. The next piece, which is probably more important, arguably, is the lighting. So the lighting is these symbols that you see right here in this little left corner. If you click right here, you're going to see the different lights that pop up. So there's an atmosphere in this world. Let me scroll down. There's an atmosphere in this world. There's height fog. There's a post-process volume, which we'll get into much later. A sky atmosphere, a skylight, a sky sphere, volumetric clouds. All of these would be found up here in your environment light mixer, and we will be showing you, or I will be showing you a little later, how to create it. But basically, these are all your lighting, and the directional light is what will always act like your sun. So if I move it around, you're going to see how the shade is changing. So these are all good things to know, but I will teach you a little further once we start getting into the tutorial on how to manipulate and how these really just help you create your world. So now that you have a basic understanding of Unreal Engine, let's get started on the tutorial. So the first thing we're going to want to do is go over here to File, and we're going to want to click New Level. When New Level pops up, just so we can show you how to bring in all the lighting, let's click Empty Level. I will say, usually I just go for Basic, but in this case, it's going to be good to show you how to create a level from literally nothing. So let's go with Empty Level. So click Empty Level and go for Create. Now this will pop up. This is basically because we just manipulated the scene, and it's going to ask you, do you want to save it? You can choose whether you want to save it or not. I'm going to go with no, so it just reverts back to the basic scene. So click Don't Save, and then now you'll have this level. So the first thing you're going to want to do is save the level. So if you go up here and go to Save Current Level, you can choose a name. I'm going to do L for level, and then underscore the coast. And then I'll put it in the content drawer and click Save. So now we have the level saved. So next, we want to go over to Window, go down to Environment Light Mixer, and then this is how we get our entire environment. So let's just click across and create all of these. So we'll do Create Skylight, Create Atmospheric Light, Create Sky Atmosphere, and all the way across. Perfect. So now you have your world. The next thing we're going to want to do is create a landscape. So up here, these are the different modes that we're going to be working in. There's a selection, a landscape, foliage, mesh paint, modeling, fracture, brush editing, animation. These are all a bunch of different things. We'll probably get into about 3 or 4 of these today. But for right now, let's just go for landscape. So once you get landscape, it is showing you a perfect showing of what you expect to see when we open the landscape. The way this is just created is perfect and will work for our purposes. So the basic landscape is all we need to do. So once you click on landscape, just go down here and click create. And then now you have a landscape. Now we can go back over to the selection mode. And this is where we're going to bring in some plugins so we can start creating our ocean. So to do that, let's go over to Edit, go down to Plugins, and then there's a few plugins that we're going to be using throughout this entire tutorial. So let's start with the first one being Movie Render Queue. So type in Movie, and you're going to see Movie Render Queue right here. So we want to click Movie Render Queue on because that's what we're going to be using when we finally export. The other one that we're going to be using is an HDRI. So let's click on this one and add the HDR backdrop plugin. And then the last one, let's type in water. And you'll see both of these waters, and click yes and yes. That warning is just explaining that this is an experimental program. It is a little finicky, but for our purposes, we're going to be using a very simple version of it. So it should work without any issues. So now that we have those 4 plugins added in, we have to restart. So just go down here and click Restart Now. So this is our level again, and we need to do one main thing, which is bring in our water. So if we go up to the top left, this is how we're going to bring in all of our different place actors. So a place actor is pretty much everything you'd see in the scene. The landscape, the static meshes, the materials, all of it. So this is going to be used quite often. So if we click on this, let's go down to Place Actors panel and click on that. This is going to bring up an entire Place Actors panel, and up here in Classes, we're going to type Water. And then if we go down, you're going to see Water, Body, Ocean. Let's click on that and drag it into our scene. Perfect. So now we can exit out of the Place Actors menu, and this is our water. I'll zoom in here so you can kind of see it's a nice little fall off. You can go under the water, see what's going on. But for the most part, this is it. And these right here, this is what is actually called a spline. We can change these points to change the shape of our actual landscape. So in this case, we want this landscape to be over here in this corner. So to do that, I'm going to grab on this, click right here, and then if you see, I don't know, any of these different symbols, just click W to go back to the movement one. I'm going to click between these two so it's all the X and Y, and I'm going to move it all the way over here. And then we're going to keep doing that for the rest of this as well. Also, if these buttons go away, click on water, body, ocean to get them back, and then go back here and pull back. Perfect. So now you have your landscape and your ocean. So the next thing we're going to need to do is start bringing in some assets that we can start creating this world with. So the number one place to get assets is either the Epic Marketplace or Quixelbridge. And today we'll be doing both. So let's go back to the Epic Marketplace. And then if you click Marketplace right here, this is where you're going to want to be. So it'll look something like this. In this particular case, we're going to be using all free assets today. So if we go over to free and click on Mega Scans, this is what we're going to be wanting to use. So if you scroll down, you're going to see Nordic Coast Collections. You're going to click on this, and this is the entire coast that we are going to be using for our scene. So go over here to Add to Project, and then your project will show up. For me, it's going to be Seaside V2, and click Add to Project. Now this is going to take a little while, so go get a coffee, hang out, and I will see you in a few seconds. Okay, so now that you have the Nordic Coast downloaded, let's change lit to unlit, and then click Window, and we're going to go into Quixelbridge. So the reason I changed lit to unlit is Quixelbridge is usually a little taxing on my system personally, so I go to unlit so it works a little better. If you work fine without it being unlit, then don't worry about this step. I'm just doing it for myself, really. So I'm going to click on local, which is things that I've personally already downloaded. And the item that we're going to be using for our ground, for our landscape, is going to be this beach sand right here. So if you go over to home and type in beach sand, click enter, you're going to see a bunch pop up. This is the one that I'm using. By the way, Quixelbridge is an entirely free asset bank of a bunch of things. You have building, food, historical, nature, interior, props, everything. And the bulk of what else we're going to be using from here on out is all going to come from Quixelbridge, and then we have one other pack we're going to download a little later. So once you have it downloaded, or to download it correctly, you want to go over here and pick the quality. I'm going to be using the highest quality. If you feel like this project might be taxing on your system, you can always go down to high, medium, or low. I'm going to be working with highest, and then if you go over to download, it'll download, and once it's downloaded, you can go over here to add and click add, and it will add into your project. So now that that's added into your project, you can control space to bring up your content drawer again, and go over to Mega Scans, and then click Surfaces, and what we want is this right here. Now we can click on the landscape, click on the material, click on the landscape, and then you can scroll down here to landscape material and click this little arrow. Once you click that little arrow, the sand will be applied to your landscape. Now the next thing we're going to want to do is add in a mannequin. The reason we want to add in a mannequin is it's going to give us a good idea of the actual layout of the scene. So we want everything to be in proportion of what is human sized. So I'm going to type in man, M-A-N-N, so we can get our mannequin. And then I'm going to scroll down to the very bottom, or scroll down halfway, and you're going to see SK Manny. Really what you want is these skeletal meshes. So I'm going to just grab any of the skeletal meshes. And drop it onto our scene. So now you have a good idea of the size of our scene. Now the next thing we're going to want to change is the water itself. So if you click on the water and go to the details panel, you can scroll down and you'll see a bunch of different options as you go down. This is going to be your water asset, and this is going to be the overall wave asset. So if you go into wave and go down wave source and then wave or water waves asset, you're going to see this right here. So double click on this and then down these arrows until you start getting a ton of options. Now this is what's going to help you key in the overall look of your waves. So for now, these are the settings that I'm going to be using for our wave. I've already changed these settings in the prior project, and I'm pretty sure these carry over. So if you want to copy, just go down this list and copy what I'm currently using. So once that's done, click save and you can close. And then after that, we can get started framing out some of our scene. Okay, so now that we have the ground and the water set up, the next thing we need to do is bring in assets for the scene. So if you click Control Space and go over to Geometry and then go to Assembly, this is where you're going to find a bunch of different assemblies. I'm going to start with cliffs first, and I'm going to bring in this cliff. Twist it a little bit, and bring it out into the distance where I can make it larger. Now again, I'm cycling between the W, E, and R keys to do this. And then now, so I actually know our scene is being lined up correctly, I'm going to also bring in a camera. So if you go up here to the top left, click on it, go down to Cinematic, and then click Cine Camera Actor. Your camera actor will show up, and then if you right click right here and go down to Pilot, you'll now be piloting the camera. And now you can move around just as you move around your camera. So I'm going to hold down Shift and drag down so you can see that this is moving, and so I can line this up to be a little more what we want it to be. So I'm going to move back a bit, and then over here you can change these settings. So I'm going to go over to Film Back and make it DSLR. It's wider because it's a wider form factor, a wider sensor, and then I'm going to make this 22, which is again closer to what we're looking for, and I'll probably stop right there. And then now that that's done, I can actually click this little eject button, and this will pop up, and now I can pin our scene right here to help us line up our scene correctly. So now I'm going to hold left click again and scroll up so the camera moves faster, and then let's bring you a little larger and a little further out into the distance, and bring in more shots. So the next one, I'm going to do Control Space and bring in this right here. Let's turn it. Which way do we want it facing? I like this. Now I can bring it closer to our main character. Let's have it about right there. And then Control Space again, and let's bring in, and then this one is quite large, but we're going to turn. Actually, which side do we want you on? Maybe we'll do it this side. Yeah, that looks better. Bring it in, and then we can actually shrink this one down so it's not so large. And then I will actually have to move you. Let's delete you, and then we'll bring you back in later. And move it in like this. And I'm actually going to shrink you again. So notice how you're getting some drastic shrinking. If you want that to change, again, you can go up here and click on the scale. And then now the scale will be a little more wiggle room to offer, which is going to be good for something like this. I'm actually going to turn it. There we go. Perfect. So now we have that done. I know I can make this much larger and bring it further into the distance, so we'll do that. Again, enlarge it, maybe even twist it a little so it looks a little sharper. And bring it out into the distance. That looks good. And then now let's try and build out the ones that are going to go over here. So now that we have these in, we can play around with the boulders as well. So same area as the cliffs. So just go to assembly and go into boulders. And then now I'm going to use the boulders to try and like draw more attention to our underground. So now, if you run out of stuff right here, we can always actually, one, you can click on ground and you can use different assets from the ground. So these are all really just mega assets using the smaller assets that were provided. But if you want the smaller assets, what you can do is actually go out of geometry, go into mega scans and do 3D assets. And then if you go up right here to the filter button and go for static mesh, all the static meshes will pop up. So what you're seeing right now is these are basically collections of these static meshes. So when you bring in ground or rocks or cliffs, they're all going to be collections of what you're already seeing. So in this case, it's going to be collections of these assets right here. And I want something like this, which is a little more flat to the ground, because I plan on having a tiny little scene right here. Sweet. And now you can kind of just use these assets to kind of scatter around and try and build out your scene. All right, so let's bring in some stuff to add texture to the ground. So to do that, I'm going to go back to boulders and I'm going to grab something like you. Actually, let's delete boulders and we can go over to Mega Sans 3D assets again and do static meshes. This way, when we use these assets, we're not using giant ones that are conglomerates of other scans. So this will just save us some space on our VRAM, which will help us a lot in the export. So the idea here is I just want to add some texture to the ground by adding larger groups that fit the overall scene. So we can do this one. Let's see what this looks like. Perfect. We can just dip you under, maybe even make you slightly larger. Okay, so now let's go into Quixel Bridge. So the best thing to do is to go up here and switch to Unlit, and then go to Window and go to Quixel Bridge. Now, once you're in Quixel Bridge, you can search everything up here. So for us, we're gonna do bench. And I'm going to download this wooden bench right here. You want it to be selected to Nanite and click download. And then I'm also going to do a boat. So I'm going to take this wooden boat right here and download that as well. And then we can even download the oars. Since we're already here, it also might be easy just to download the plants that we're going to be using. So I'm going to download Nordic Coastal Ground Cover. I'm going to put this on highest setting, then I can switch to Now Night once I download it. And then I'm also going to do some just silvery glade fern and download that as well. So those will be the plants that we use. And then while these are downloading, the next thing that I'm going to be using, which is going to matter for the scene, is I'm going to open up the Epic Games, go over to Marketplace, or Library, sorry, and I'm going to bring in the European Hornbeam. These are the trees that I'm going to bring in. And if you go over to the Marketplace and type in European Hornbeam, it will show up. All you need to do is click right here and then go to add a project and click add to project, and it will be added. That should be all the assets that we're going to be using for this scene. Okay, so now that we have those assets downloaded, we can go over to this rock first. So we have to place certain trees because the foliage won't work. If you haven't used Unreal before and you're not sure what I mean by the foliage, we will be using it soon. So it will make sense in the future, but right now, probably not so much. So I'm gonna go back into Megascans and click Static Mesh again. And then as you scroll down, you're gonna see all the new assets you brought in. And if you click European Hornbeam, you're gonna see the other assets we brought in, which are all the trees. So for this part right here, I'm actually just going to be adding the skinnier trees throughout this rock. And then one quick note, before you get started, you want to click on the top one and shift click to the bottom one. right click and make sure that nanite is on for all of these. So right now you'll see enable nanite zero meshes, which basically means all the meshes are already nanite enabled. And you want to make sure you're also doing it with the new assets that just came in as well. Make sure they're all nanite. So in this case, enable 66 nanite meshes. It will probably take a while to enable nanite sometimes, but you will not regret it. It saves a lot of processing power for your machine. Okay, so now that nanite is finished, I'm just going to be using these trees to spread around our scene. So a lot of the idea is to have kind of like more of like that Oregon coast mountainside. So just find the trees you think work and kind of add it in. There's no point adding in a tree that you can't really see. So I will note that one. You might want these to be all noticeable in your scene. Just to add some nice character to the overall scene. Perfect. So now that that has a little more texture, we can do it with the rest of our scene. So I'm just going to be going around and literally doing the exact same thing here, just adding trees throughout the scene. Perfect. Okay, so now that the trees are all set up and we like where those are placed, the next thing we can do, actually I don't like this one right here. I think it's a little distracting. So the next thing we're gonna do is add in some foliage. So to do this, we're gonna go up here to selection mode and switch to foliage. And you'll have all the foliage added. Sometimes it adds when you bring in from Cook's Bridge. In this case, I'm going to delete it because we don't want to use all of it. We're just going to use a few. The idea here is to be a little sparingly because we don't want it to be overdone. But we can click right here and bring in our Nordic coastal. Where is it? Right here. All of these. So let's just bring in a few. Might want to just pick varied objects. We're not going to use a ton of it. We're just going to sprinkle it around, and we don't want to overload our system too much since we already have a lot going on. So right here, I'm just going to try this and see how much shows up. That seems like a good amount just to add some texture. And then I will go over here and just kind of add texture with these plants. I will say if you feel as if it won't be seen, don't worry too much about adding it in because it will just bog down your system unnecessarily. So all that looks good. I think the last thing I want to do with the foliage is actually we can go back in. And I'm just going to grab maybe these two rocks. Actually, these I think those are the same rocks. Let me find. Let's maybe take these rocks, drag them in. So we have these three rocks. So if you click on the plants and shift click and then click the check mark, they will no longer be being pasted. So now the only thing that's going to be pasted are these rocks. But I'm actually going to click on these rocks and bring their scale down to 0.2 and 0.4. So now they're going to be quite small. And then I'm going to take the brush size to probably 50 and then bring the paint density all the way up. And then now what we want to do is just kind of texture the rest of the sand and the rocks so it feels a little more realistic when you're seeing it on the scene. So it's not just empty all of a sudden with nothing there. And this way it kind of blends in our other static meshes into the scene. And I think we're perfect right there. So now we have our scene. Everything's looking pretty good. The only thing we should add in now is our boat. So again, we can go back to Mega Scans. This is where you'll find your boat. And then we have the bench right here. So we can place the bench there. I'm actually going to place one of the oars on top and maybe another oar on the bottom. Let me move it a little to the side so it looks like it's leaning perfectly. Nice. And then let's take our little boat and just up it a little bit and maybe turn it slightly and drag it a little more ashore. Perfect. So now we have our boat. So now that we have everything in our scene, this is looking good. The next thing we got to do is just make sure the lighting is going to look good. So to do that, what we're going to want to first do is actually bring in a post-process volume. So if we go up here back to this little box with a plus sign and go down to volumes, you're going to see post-process volumes. You want to click on that one. And then click over here and type in bound into the search bar. And then click this. All this means is whatever changes we're going to make in this volume is going to affect the entire world, which is exactly what we want. Next thing we're going to do is type in EXP for exposure. And we want to click on the min EV and min max. So min EV 100 and max EV 100. And I think let's start by making both of these -5. It's a little too bright, so maybe -2. -2. We can keep this for now. So what this basically means is this exposure right here. Clicking on the wrong thing again. Give me a second. This exposure right here is going to set the exposure so it won't change. If you're in a dark room and you're playing in Unreal and you move in towards an object, you'll see the exposure on the camera actually shift. And you don't really want that when you're making a cinematic scene, especially when you're keying in your lighting. So this way, the exposure is going to stay the same no matter what. Okay, so now that we have the post-process volume in, the next thing we want to do is play with the lighting. So you want to go to your directional light. Click on your directional light up here, and then go to E, and move the light so it's kind of shining in right maybe about here. And then you can actually lower it as well, so it offers a little more of an orange tint. So once we have it right about there, I'm gonna take the lux down over here, the intensity, and to 2. So it's offering a lot more detail in the background, and I don't want it to be super bright. Then I'm actually gonna click on this and even make it more orange. Maybe right about here. Okay, so we like our lighting, but I think we can make it a little better. So if we move it a little closer down to the horizon, you're gonna see how it's turning more orange because it's more nighttime. So I'm gonna bring it up just a tad to probably about here. And then I'm gonna go over to the height fog and see if we can get some nice cut throughs with the fog, some nice lighting. So I'm going to increase the scattering, and the extinction scale can go up as well. We'll probably bring this up to a 2.5. And now you're going to see a little more light scattering through our scene. So like when we move forward, different things can change. But really what we want with the extinction is a nice brightness to our scene. And if you want, now that this is in, you're getting some nice highlights shooting through the fog right here. If you want, you can even add some trees to the top of this to kind of break it apart and make it a little cleaner. But this is how you're going to get that really nice cinematic lighting. Now, the last thing you can do to really bring out your scene, this is not mandatory at all because it's a paid piece, but I do suggest it. If you are into Unreal, his channel is William Foucher. He makes some really awesome stuff, but one of them is this over here, which is the Easy Fog. It is not expensive at all. It's a very well priced item, especially for what you get. This is what I'm using in the later scenes. You're going to see some nice fog that shows up right here and right here and right here. I don't teach you how to use it. He has a perfect way of putting it in and teaches you how to use it just fine. So if you want to check him out, and you can also purchase his Easy Fog, but that is what I'm using in the later scenes. You're going to notice how there's like more actual fog units that are around these mountains in the background. That is exactly what I'm using. So yeah, this is how you make this scene. Now from here on out, I'm going to be teaching you how to shoot and fully do the camera sequencer to create your scene for export. Okay, you're going to notice that this scene isn't exactly the same as the one from before. The reason that is because this is actually the original scene. I wanted to show you the original scene and record this because I wanted you to see exactly how I shot and made the original scene. So from here on out, that's what you're going to be seeing. Okay, so now that you're done making your scene, the next thing you have to do is actually create the camera sequencer and create the shots that you want to use. So the first thing we're going to do is go up here to this clapperboard on the top left and do add level sequence. You can name this whichever you want. I'm going to do ls underscore tut part 2, and then just click on content and save. Now you'll have your sequencer right here, and it'll always pop up at the very bottom of your scene or wherever it's outside of the folders. So in this case, I'm just going to drag it up to cinema. So now it's in the cinema. So we already have 2 cameras. These are 2 cameras we set up earlier with our shots. And all we need to do to add these in is go over here to track, click on it, go to actor to sequencer, and then find your cameras. So this is the first one, actor 2, and then I'm going to do it again and bring in actor 2. There we go. So now we have both cameras. Let me close these. Here we are. So here's both cameras. Now to see a camera in your sequencer, you can click the little camera view and it'll show each different camera. So right now you have a little camera cuts up here, but this is only showing one of the cameras, which is going to be camera actor, just one, or it doesn't have a number. So what we want to do is bring in camera actor 2 to also be up here. So to start off, let's bring this down, and we can also, these are going to be your playhead. So this is the full distance of which, if you started exporting, it would export. So if you exported this right now, it would just go past this and go into blank frames. So what we want to do is drag this red bar across, and then you can actually drag this to add more frames to your sequencer, or to show more, and then keep bringing this across. So I'm going to bring it over to 600. So right now we have the first one right here, and we're going to probably stop you at 300. I'm going to bring the playhead across, which is this little bar right here. And then I'm going to click on camera cuts on the add and do camera actor 2. So now it is going to go from camera actor no numbered to camera actor 2. So if you want to view that, you click right here, click play, and it'll just cut. So what we're going to want to do now is animate this camera. So I think one of the shots that I want in my overall scene is going to be just a nice steady moving forward. So you can click right here on this camera, and it's going to add us to the correct camera, and now we can move it around. So I want maybe a little higher up. You can also hold shift. Sorry, you can also left click and drag down. And if you look up here at the top left, or sorry, top right, the actual camera symbol will have numbers changing. That all it's doing is helping me slow the camera down and then speed the camera up. So now it's at 1.5. So when I move the camera, it's not moving and shooting across as quickly as if I was doing 3, or now it's moving much faster. So I'm going to bring it down probably to 1.2. And then now I'm going to move the camera depending on how I want it. So I think this is a good start, maybe a little lower. So I'm going to do this, or keep it here, and click this transform. And if you open up transform, you're going to see it has location, scale, and rotation. So by clicking the main this main keyframe button to add a keyframe, it is going to add a keyframe for location, rotation, and scale. So if I make this larger, if I twist it, or in this case rotate it, or if I change its location, which is moving it back and forth, it'll all be logged in these keyframes. So now, if I take this playhead all the way to the very end of this first shot, and I now move the camera forward, it's right here, and then add another keyframe, it will move between both keyframes, like this. Perfect. So the other thing you can do to actually change this is, if you notice, this is going to start slow and then kind of speed up. See that kind of gradual movement? And then at the very end, it'll do the same thing, slowly slow down. What that is, that action is actually denoted by these little circle symbols. So if you just left click and drag across and then right click, you'll see it says cubic auto with the little circle that you see. Now if you switch it to linear or constant, in this case I'm going to do linear, and you click play, you're going to notice it doesn't do any speed or slow down. What it is, it's staying constant throughout the entire play. So as a beginner, I would suggest using linear and cubic independently, or it really just depends on which, because let me show you this. If I want to do a transform right here, and I'm gonna, I don't know, make you stare up at the sky, and then it's gonna go back down, right? So if I do all these into linear, look how it'll look. See how it's a little more jarring? See how it kind of like immediately shot down? Doesn't look as clean. However, if I keep both beginning and end linear and change this to cubic, you'll see it's much more smooth of a movement. So what you're going to want to do is just play around with each to try and get a nice clean animation. And really these two will see through on, I would say, 90% of the animations you're trying to do. So for our case, I'm actually going to delete these keyframes and I'm going to keep it as linear. The reason I want to keep it as linear is because I'm going to do multiple cuts throughout, which means it's going to cut from this scene to this scene. And it's always a little jarring when you slow down, stop, and then start up again. So it's a little nicer, in my opinion, when it'll stay linear and then just cut to another moving scene. So now let's go over to our next camera, which is camera actor 2. So for camera actor 2, we can go down to the playhead right here, and then we can click on the little camera symbol to bring us to its camera. So let's first start by keying it into a little better of a position. Unfortunately, since we're doing a top down, it really doesn't like where I'm at. So if you actually go over here to this top left, you can just click these buttons to reorient the camera, and then now you can just move it like normal again. So I want like a nice cool top down shot. I think that'll do. Okay, so this shot, we can start here. Then again, I'm going to go over to this transform button and add a keyframe. And then I'm going to go over to the end of the playhead. And slowly bring you in for another keyframe. And now it'll do the same thing. But again, it's going a slow start. So now if we click this camera to see both, you'll see what I'm talking about. So this is gonna go linear over to cubic. See how that's a bit jarring for the eye to have movement, and then it immediately stops and then slowly moves again. So what I'm gonna do is highlight them and switch them to linear. And then now look. A lot cleaner when it's moving next to each other. So now those are our two main shots. What I want to do is add a few other shots that are just kind of like, so those are our two main shots. So these are our two main hero shots. And what I want to do is create maybe 2 or 3, maybe 4 more shots that are more atmospheric. Show more close-ups of the scene and maybe have like really good lighting, stuff like that. So to do that, we can close down both these cameras. Close. Also, whenever you see an autosave, I usually save again because autosave is a little weird. So I would save current level. Sequencer can get a little finicky, so it's nice to constantly save. So now that we have these two shots, we want to bring in a little two more shots. We want to bring in a little more shots to kind of even out our scene. So go into cinematic and go into cinema camera actor. And let's bring us into our cinema folder. And then down here, we can go into sequencer, add the camera to the sequencer. And then with the playhead at the end, let's actually increase this again. We're probably gonna have about 2,000 frames maybe. Perfect. And now we're going to add our camera to the camera cuts. And then if you ever mess up and you accidentally like bring the camera cuts, all you have to do is just drag it across and it will lock, especially if you have this little magnet, which is snapping. So it's going to let you snap to each different location. So perfect. So now we have this camera and we're already on that camera. So let's see what we want to do with this camera. So I already have 2 good hero shots. Where are we? There we are. So I already have 2 good hero shots. Now I want something a little more atmospheric, and I kind of like this tree and how things are shining through. So for this case, maybe we can mess around here. So if you want to change your actual camera settings, you can click on the camera, and over here in the details panel, you can change anything for the camera. So for my film back, I'm usually using DSLR. It's just more natural for my eye because I personally shoot on a DSLR. So it connects more to the focal length that I'm used to. So when I use a DSLR, this is the 35 focal length that I'm used to. So universal zoom is fine. I'm gonna change it to 30 meter 1.4 because I kind of want this to be that. And then we can probably go like this. So get it in the position you want it to be in. I'm actually going to reduce the aperture to 1.4. The aperture is what's causing this blur right here. And then let me find the focus settings. So click here, click down focus settings, and you can actually click on what you want to focus on. So manual will be letting you click, which now means this is perfectly in focus and the background is blurred, which is what we're going for. We can now just slowly slide across. So let me click one more time. Perfect. So now I want a nice smooth shot right here. And then let's maybe go just 100 frames. I'm gonna, again, left click and drag down to really slow down the camera so I'm not doing anything crazy. Because we just want a nice smooth shot of watching the sunlight kind of drag through the way you see it doing right now. So just move the playhead a little further. I'm gonna move again. And then now I'm going to click keyframe, and then we can watch it just nice and slowly have this close-up atmospheric look. Perfect. So now these are 3 good shots to learn from, but what we can do to really bring these shots out to make them a little better is add some motion blur or some dirt mask to really make it look nice and clean. So let's do one more shot that we're going to set up, and then I'll show you where, you know, camera shake and dirt mask really can bring out a shot. So we have this camera. So let's go up again. We're going to add another camera. Go over to cinematic, cinema camera actor. It's going to pop up at the bottom. Grab it, drag to the top. Add it in. And then now we can add it in here as well. So we're going to do cinema camera 4 and then add it to here. So now you have one more camera. So let's think about how we can do a good, kind of like a dirt mask scene. So let's click on the camera real quick, and let's just change it to DSLR, which is automatically going to add a full frame. So it's going to look a lot cleaner. And then let me speed the camera speed up a bit so I can move around better. So what do we want to do? Maybe something showing the ocean. I kind of want the dirt mask to hit when I kind of look up at the sky. So maybe we can kind of go like this and then look up like this. So I'm going to shoot back here. I'm going to slow the camera down so we get the good movement we're looking for, or we can key in the exact movement we're looking for. And then I'm actually going to put the focus right here. So as we move across, the focus is going to continually be in front as we turn to this. So it's going to be really cool, like ground focus, while this is nice and faded in the background. So I'm going to angle it down a little bit so the main focus is nice and in scene. I'm going to click transform, and then let's move forward, and then now let's try and find our next shot. So we want it to kind of strafe across and look up. Let's see how this looks, and then we can always just play around with it after. So we can already tell we're about to go into the bush, which is something we don't necessarily want, but that looks pretty good. So let's actually click on this and move you a little more across. And then let's see how this looks now. Sorry, let's click on this again. And you can move it across, and then you're gonna have to, click the keyframe to block it in. Let's see how that looks. Okay, that looks good. So now what we're going to want to do is change the focus as we go, because right here, this is the focus. And we want the focus probably about right here to start transferring to focusing all the way out here. So to do that, we can actually go right here to camera component, and I'll literally say current focal length, or manual focus distance. So this manual focus distance is set, and it's the manual focus distance that we want right here. So what we are going to do is find the area in which we want it to start transferring, which is probably about right here. So now we have that locked in, and we're going to go to the very end where we want it probably set and focused right about here. And to change it, or to lock in the correct manual focus, we can go back over to our right, and where it says manual focus distance, click on here, the eyedropper, and click on what we want to be focused. Now it's focused. But if you see, it says a different number here than it says right here. So although we changed the focus of the camera, it's not actually locked into our sequencer. So what we're going to have to do is now lock it into the sequencer. So to do that, we just need to copy these numbers. So this is 12270. So I'm going to type 12270. And the second I click enter, it locks it in. So now you will see the focus gradually change. So we just hit it, And now you can see it slowly moving out, and the background is perfectly in focus. Perfect. So these are the 4 scenes I'm going to be working with while I teach you guys some more good techniques to use for your camera. Okay, so the first thing we're going to want to do is create some good camera shake for these different scenes. Camera shake is always something that's very natural. You'll see it in almost every single movie, even if there's a gimbal in a movie or high-end like a movie, you'll always still get a little bit of camera shake. And then some movies will even use camera shake to try and bring out an action scene. So in this case, we're just going to do some slight camera shake to kind of emulate more of like a real life feel of how this would be shot. So we're going to go to Control Space, back to our content drawer. And on the content drawer, we're going to right click. We're going to go over to Blueprint Class. And then we are going to go to All Classes, click this down right here. And then type in Camera Shake. Now, as you type in Camera Shake, there's going to be a bunch of ones that pop up. What you want to click on is Camera Shake Base. Click on it, click Select, and you're done. So now let's just name this Camera Shake. So a little autosave got in the way, so just click Edit. Oh, whoops. All right, well, we're skipping ahead a bit. So I want to change the name of this asset. So we can save as Camera Shake 1. This is mainly because you might want different camera shakes, so it might be good to just name one 1, 2, 3, or maybe like hard camera shake, fast camera shake, that kind of stuff, so you know the difference between the levels of camera shake you're going for each different scene. In my case, I'm just going to name this Camera Shake 1 and click Save. And then what it does is it actually closed down. So when you first opened it, it kind of had more of a, I would say, material node-based system. But if you close it and reopen it, it's going to look like this. And this is actually what you want it to look like. You don't want the node-based system that they had showing. So with this open, you're just going to go over to Root Camera Shake Pattern and change this to Perlin Noise. And then now when you click down, you're going to have a bunch of things like location, rotation, field of view, and timing. For timing, duration, first thing you want to do is always switch this to 0. 0 just means it's going to last infinitely, so you can always push it out forever, which is what you want, because you don't want your camera shake just stopping at 1 second. You want to be able to have control of the camera shake, and you can always change it in your camera sequencer, so change this to 0. For location, this is really what is going to cause our camera shake. So if we threw this on our scene right now, it will already be causing camera shake because of the way it's already set up. But the camera shake might be a little intense. So just to show you, let's do compile, save. Go over to the scene you want it to be on, drag down, so this is going to be camera actor. If you're never not sure, it'll say right here, or if you actually just hold your cursor on it, it'll pop up the name. So cine camera actor. And then you're actually going to want to click this plus sign and go to camera shake, and then camera shake 1 will pop up. Click it. Now that you clicked it, this is the duration of the camera shake in which it exists. So you're going to want to bring it all the way over and let it engulf your entire shot. Perfect. So now this is what the camera shake looks like just outside the box. Can't really tell much of a difference, but we can adjust this to however we want. So just to show you, I don't know, a more insane look, let's just change this to 3 and 3. Compile, save. As you can see, it's already kind of moving. If I click play, it's probably going to give you a big headache. So this is just to show you how you can play around with the camera shake to get the effect you want. So now in our case, we obviously want it to be a lot less than that. So let's do back to 1. And then you can actually change the individual values, which is what I personally prefer to do first, and then change the overall values. So X, Y, and Z, this is going to be kind of like strafing left and right or forward and backwards, where Z is up and down. And Z is where I feel like some of the most movement comes from, because the person who would be holding the camera is walking, which means the camera is going to bob up and bob down. So I tend to keep this higher than the rest. So for these, I'm actually going to bring them down to maybe 0.25. And then for this one, I'll probably do 0.75 each. Now for rotation, kind of has the same thing. Pitch is whether it's going to be looking up or looking down. Yaw is going to be looking left and looking right. So just imagine the camera's still, it's like your head and you're looking left and looking right. And then roll is literally the rotation of it left and right. So roll, I feel like, would be one of the least things to change. So I tend to go low on roll. Yaw and pitch can be a little more, but again, I'm a little more gentle on those as well. So I'm going to do 0.25 across for this, and then maybe 0.5 for the rest. Now the frequency is how often it's going to occur, and then the amplitude is how intense it's going to occur. So I'm going to go for maybe a 1.5 amplitude on both, and then maybe a 2 frequency. Again, this is just keying in. I don't know how this is going to look before showing you. I'm really just showing you how you can mess around and kind of get a feel. This, however, looks pretty good. So I would say I like the rotation and the location changing of the camera shake. I do just think it happens too often. So if I was going to change anything, I would just open it back up and then probably bring both of these down. So 1.5 and 0.75, 1.5 and 0.75. And let's see how that looks. There we go. So it's like a natural, nice sway. And then again, you can change this to whatever you feel like looks best. For me, I think this nice, gentle shake definitely fits the scene and the look that I'm going for. So now you can just add shake to the rest of your scenes, whichever ones you think want it. So now that those are all added in, you can see a nice and gentle sway throughout all the scenes. So now the other thing that I want to show you is dirt masks. So to add a dirt mask, what we need to do is actually click on the camera that we want to add the dirt mask to, which will be actor 4. And then, so in the details panel, you can actually scroll down to post process. So click this, and then if you look, as it goes down, you'll have lens, click on lens, and then as it goes down, you'll have dirt mask, and then click on dirt mask. Now what you want to do is enable all of these, and then click right here, and then inside Unreal, there will already be a dirt mask. So if you just type in dirt, you'll have dirt screen pop up. Now you won't notice any change. This is one complaint I have. If you bring this up to 8, you won't notice any change still. It's a little weird. However, if I type in like 200, see how you get the dirt mask showing up. And then if I do say 400 or 500, you will see it even more. So I'm not really sure why it natively doesn't have the correct like scaling on here, but do remember that when you're handling this. So for now, we can actually just keep the dirt mask on and keep this down to 0. What we need to do is actually bring it in to our sequencer so we can then key it in. So right now, dirt masks are usually shown, or dirt will usually be seen when sunlight is directly hitting camera. So that's usually what we want to do, is when sunlight's in the case. So if you ever have a camera maybe under shade that moves into light, you can have a dirt mask engage. There's a bunch of different ways you can do it. For this, what I'm going to do is as it starts to turn, so about right here, I'm going to have the dirt mask slowly come in till it's full right about here and then shining. So let's start right about here. And what we want to do is actually go into camera component. So click the plus, and then it's going to be the same in the camera settings. So it's under post process. So what we want to do is go into post process settings, go across, and you'll see lens dirt mask, and then we just need intensity. So now we have intensity added to our scene. It'll be right here. And we want it to be 0 right here, and then right about here. We can have it close to max, which is going to be, let's say, 400. And then let's see how this looks. There you go. As the light comes in, you kind of see the dirt mask. But it's a little too strong, and I kind of don't want it distracting from this right here. So under this scenario, let's actually bring it, if you just click on it, the playhead will shoot over. And then I'm going to change you to 200 instead. And that's a little more gentle, so let's see how that looks. There we go. So this is how you're going to use basic camera sequencer to set up shots. Now, in my main video, you might see a little more than these, but I do feel like what I go over right here is plenty for you to learn how to grab the other shots that I will be having in my final scene. So now what you're going to need to do to export this is use something called the movie render queue. So if you go to the left hand, you're going to see this right here, this clapperboard. If you click on it, this is the movie render queue. However, you might only have the movie scene capture legacy, which is totally fine. We can get this into your system. So if you go up here to edit, go down to plugins, and then type in movie, and then movie render queue will pop up right here. So what you want to do is check, and then it'll prompt you to restart. So restart, make sure you save everything, and then come back. Once you come back, this will probably still be checked, so it'll look something like this. So you're going to want to click these three dots and click on movie render queue. Once you do that, you can open up your clapperboard. Now, I'm not going to dive too deep on how to get like the perfect settings. If you want the perfect settings, I do have a video already up for you. So definitely go on my channel and check that one out. However, for this one, I am going to get you, I would say 90% there. So the first thing you're going to want to do is click on unsave configure, and I actually usually keep my JPEGs, mainly because as it's exporting, you can see the JPEG in your own system, whereas in a .exr, you can't. But I do edit everything with a .exr. So the first thing you want to do is click on the settings and add a .exr. This way you're going to get a JPEG and a .exr, so you can actually check how the export's going as it's going. And then you can use the .exr to actually edit later on, which I will show you in this tutorial. So first thing you have is the .exr, and then you want to bring in anti-aliasing. This is your next one. Now you can set this up multiple ways. I will say this right here is what will take your render the longest. If I was going for a high quality render, I would probably do 32 and 16, something like this. For this render, the final one you're going to see is probably going to be about 12 and 12, only because it just takes long for these things to render. So I think 12 and 12 will probably be fine. If that's still slow, you can go down to 6 and 6, but in general you want this because it's how a lot of glitches in your scene will be fixed. So you have .exr, JPEG. You don't really need deferred rendering. You can delete it or keep it. It doesn't matter. It doesn't change anything. And then anti-aliasing. And now when you go to output, you have the output directory, which is where you're going to throw your export. So now that's where it's going to export. So that's how you're going to set that up. And then you get to choose your output resolution. I am usually a fan of 2.5K because it is a little faster and it's still very high quality compared to what you see today, because most things are going to be HD. So this is how I usually render. And then you also have your actual frame rate you can change. Going back to that, in case anyone wanted to change their frame rate, you can change your frame rate right here. So it says 30 FPS, you can change it to 2397, and you'll actually see, if you look at the numbers right here, as I click it, you'll see them switch. See how they switched? So I actually do want 23.976 just because that is a little more cinematic. So I'm going to go back in. And then for the output, it'll just say use custom frame rate. I don't want to do output frame rate. It's going to be 24 frames per second. So basically, it's just going to use whatever you're having for your sequencer. So click accept, and then all you need to do is click render local, and then it will start rendering. So let that go through, and then I will see you guys a little later once it's done to teach you how to bring this into an editing software, do very basic color grading, and then compile it so you can then make it a video that you want to watch. Okay, so now that you have exported your .exrs, the next thing we can do is go to DaVinci. I do want to preface this by saying I am not a pro in DaVinci. I tend to use Premiere Pro most of the time. However, DaVinci is a free software, and I wanted you to be able to open up Unreal and create an entire project from start to finish without having to spend a single dime, which is why we're going to be in DaVinci. So if you click download DaVinci first of all, and then once you open it up, it's a completely free software, and it will look something like this. You can go over to the Untitled project and just click open. Or if you didn't have an untitled project, you can always just click new project. So once it first opens, we need to make one quick change. So if we go over to File, Project Settings, we want to go over to Color Management. So .exr exports as a different color than the way DaVinci will read it. So if you don't make this change, you're going to notice your color is drastically different than what you saw within Unreal. So once you're in the color management, go over to Input Lookup Table, and you want to scroll down to Linear to RGB. So linear to sRGB, that's what you want, and then click Save. So now that that's done, you can go over to Media, and then click these three little dots at the top, go across and make sure this is on sequence. The reason you want this on sequence is sometimes it will import as a full sequence, other times this will import as the individual images. You don't want to deal with individual images, it just makes things difficult, so this should force it to import as a sequence. So now that that's done, you can actually do Control-I and bring it up to your .exrs, whatever file it's in, and you want to click on the very first one, scroll all the way down, shift click on the very last one, and then click Open. And here is your sequence. So now we can go over to the Edit tab, and in the Edit tab we're going to drag and drop it in. So now this is going to be our entire sequence, and the first thing we're going to want to do is edit it. So the easiest thing to know, which is this is going to be very basic editing, no real change, just going to be hard cuts throughout. So in this scenario, your best friend is going to be the the B button, which is going to be Blade. And Blade is going to help you cut up this video. So before we get started on that, I'm actually going to go over here, click Import, and I'm going to bring in a song. I have this from YouTube's library, so this should be free if you want to use the same song. If not, go find your own. So this is a song we're going to use. It's called Contact Light of Tower, and this is what it sounds like. Cool. So I already know, I'll mute this for now so you can hear me. So I already know that I want the beginning to the end of the sequence to kind of be at the beginning. So what I'm first going to do is just go across and pretty much just cut up the entire scene. So I will speed through that, and you can just watch. Also, quick little note, to scroll back and forth, you can middle mouse click to scroll back and forth. And then also, if you click B, you'll have Blade. If you click A, you'll be able to select things. So the first thing I know I want to do is start off with more of a close-up. So I think I'm actually going to do the trees to start right here. And then I will do this seaside one right here. And then we can probably do this. Or maybe these two. And then start with this. Maybe this, and then this. I kind of already was playing around with this in my head, so I kind of have a head start. If you're curious if this is how I normally edit, just quick, it is not, but this should give me a close, good start. So I already know that I don't like the slow beginning in this shot to this shot, so I'm gonna cut the very beginning off a bit. And then if you actually click on the space, between the two and click backspace, it'll delete the space. All right, I want that to be a little more seamless. So right when it's in focus, about right here, is when I will have it be in scene. And then it's just a boat, so we don't need to focus on the boat for too long. Probably cut right now. And we definitely don't. Okay, did it start slow? Let's see. I think let's maybe cut the half of this off. So at that height of that little music bump right there, I'll have it cut. And then maybe right about here, I'll have our hero shot come in. And then let's speed up our hero shot a bit too. Just slightly back. You can also change this to zoom in and zoom out if you want to get a more clear shot. I want it to go perfect. And then you can blade this out, close it, and then we'll have the music fade out. So to do that, you just need to go down here, click on this little white bar, and pull this across. And now the music will slowly fade out. So now the next thing we have to do is the color. So if you click the color tab, it'll bring you over here. And this is where you are going to first be able to handle your color. Now, I do want to preface this by saying I am by no means a colorist. I don't even use DaVinci that much. I would say I'm actually trying to learn it right now. So this is just going to be a very basic edit. But again, this is going to get you all the way from start to finish to have a good video. So the first thing we're going to do actually is click Alt-S, and this is how you're going to get a node. This is a node-based system, which basically means if I just keep, I'll do Alt-S and Alt-S. If I want to do something crazy right here, and then do something crazy right here, they'll counteract each other as they go down. So this is going to be the first, second, third. So if I delete this one, it's going to be this, and then now it's nothing. So it's really non-destructive way of handling your look. So if I delete it, now we're back to normal. Whereas a lot of times in other software, once you start making changes, it gets a little convoluted and you can't really keep track of it. So this is a really good way of doing that. So the first thing I'm going to do is Alt-S, and we can right click on it, and then I'm just going to name this one node label. Let's just name this contrast. And then this right here is your little waveform contrast. This is usually what you want to create an S-curve with. And what I mean by that is usually bring up the highlights and bring down the shadows. So your highlights are brighter and your shadows are darker. I will say this already came in with a good amount of contrast. So I think maybe bringing up the shadows looks a little better here. And then what if we bring it down? No, I kind of like the brightness. So I'm going to go with not an S-curve, which is rare in general, I would say. But I do want you to be able to see this because there's a lot of contrast in the scene. So that's number one. And the next one I'm going to do is Alt-S. And this is going to be our color. So we're going to change this depending on if we feel like the color is not accurate. So what I mean by that is if you actually change the temp, you can see it will be getting much more red and much more blue. So if we go over here, you can see at the start it kind of looked a little natural, and then now it doesn't. So I would say the temperature of the scene is probably a little high. So this is 0. I think you can actually probably go a little low to make the light not be as, I guess, orange as you'd want it to be. I do kind of like the orange style though, so I'm gonna go with -400 and keep a bit of the orange, but kind of let the green still stay green. And then you can also change lift, gamma, gain, and offset. I don't know these that well, but I'm pretty sure this one's about shadows, this one's midtones, and this one's highlights. But again, if you're not really sure, you can always just play around with them and see. So yeah, this is more going to affect highlights. This is definitely affecting more of your midtones, and this is going to affect your shadows. Yeah. And then you can actually change it too. So if you want like to introduce more blue into your shadows, this is how you would do it. I actually really like this look. I might introduce a small bit of blue. How do we like that? I think that works. Perfect. And then let's go up here. Let's go to right click, node label, and we can just name this color. And the next one I'm going to do is Alt S. We can bring down here. So I'm actually going to go up here to effects and type in glow and drag glow down. So glow is now on here. And you can tell right off the bat, it's a little intense. Glow is basically going to increase the bloom of your scene. I'm gonna be decreasing pretty much all of this. So the shine threshold. Okay, so let's make it 0.985. We can do the spread to be much lower. Let's do 0.025. And then you kind of just bring these down. I'll bring them all down to 0.5. 0.5. 0.5, and then we can kind of do the same here. You can also just play around with it to see which is working, like how it's affecting your scene. I would say the saturation can be 0. I don't need it any more saturated. And there we go. So, and then if you ever wanted to see and test to make sure if you like it or not, you can actually click on the node and go up here and turn it on and off. So it's just a very subtle glow, which kind of just fills the scene a bit. And then you can also, I think, Control D to turn it off and then on. So this is what it was originally. This is the scene now. And then what I usually like to do at the very end is add one more node. This node will pretty much just kind of fill in any areas that I feel like aren't looking totally right. You can go into each individual one and kind of change it. So if you want it to be more orange, you can make it more orange. The glow is attacking it quite a lot though. So let's do negative maybe 100. And then if we don't like this, we can always just turn it off. So Alt D will shut them all off, and Control D will shut off the single one. So we can kind of see the change that it's making here if we shut it off. So we definitely like the contrast added. Yeah, that color corrects pretty well. Perfect, yeah. So right here, I think what I'm gonna do is I might add a little bit of orange to our gain, and then a little bit of blue to our blues, and kind of try and get a good contrast in there. You can even maybe add up the midtones. So then we can do Control D. That's what it was now. That's what it is now. Just nice slight changes to keep that beautiful orange in there, because that's kind of like the time of day we are going for with our shot. Perfect. So now that you have the color grade finished, you need to transfer this color grade to the rest and then make any adjustments. I won't be showing me making any adjustments to the entire scene, since this is going to be basically what I'm going to be using for most. But do remember, always make some base adjustments, because sometimes some colors don't work or some scenes don't connect to others. So now you have these grades, but you want to transfer them to the rest. So what we're going to do now is we're going to click on our next scene, shift click across, and then go back to this, and we want to do apply grade. All existing grades clips will be replaced. Click yes, and then now they all have the same grade. Okay, so now I've just finished up all of the color. The last thing we can do is actually export it. So all the colors just finished up, and if you look down here, you're going to see this little deliver tab. So click on deliver, and then this is what's going to pop up. You can do a bunch of custom exports or preset exports. In this case, it usually goes off of your project settings. So if your project settings set up correctly, which they should be, you should be fine. So in this case, I'm just going to change the file name to Seaside Tut underscore export underscore v1. Lots of underscores. And then I'm going to pick the location. So now that the location is chosen, you can choose the render, the video, QuickTime, which is just fine, H.264, also fine. This is going to be the resolution, probably most native to what you put in. So if you export it at high resolution, put down a high resolution, just make sure they match. You would have noticed by now if they didn't though. 24 frames per second, which again is based off of your frame, and yeah, everything else looks good. So now that that's all done, all you have to do is click add to render queue. And then now that it's on render queue, you can go down here and click render all. Now it'll go through rendering and you'll have your video. So yeah, guys, that is it. I hope you really liked the tutorial. I wanted to give you something that gave you like a really good start from beginning to end on everything you would need to really understand Unreal and how to get your export out of Unreal quickly. So really hope you guys enjoyed it. Like, subscribe, comment if you have any questions, and I will catch you guys on the next one.